Okay, well, welcome back to introduction to creating websites using Python and Flask. Alongside Susan Ibach, I am Christopher Harrison. And I actually want to go back to one big thing that we pointed out in Module 1, because there's been a couple of questions about this inside of the Q&A. The people have gone out to GitHub, they downloaded the project, they tried to launch it, and they're going, hey, wait a minute.
I got an error message.
Yes. So let's go in and highlight this. Now, the first thing that I need to stress right away is make sure that you have downloaded and installed the Python tools for Visual Studio.
Yep.
And that you've installed the Python interpreter.
All available at pytools.codeplex.com.
Exactly. P-Y-T-O-O, here.
P-Y-T-O-O-L-S. I'll put it in the QA window as well.
Yeah, just do that because unfortunately my typing on Zoom seems to sort of come and go.
So I'm putting that link right now into the Q&A window. So if you haven't got the Python tools installed or you're not sure where to get the code for the interpreter, it's all on the installation instructions there.
Awesome. I love it. Now, this little project right here, you'll notice this is trivia for Module 5. And if you're just tuning in, we know it's still Module 2. The reason that I went with this is because I pulled this down from GitHub this morning. So didn't already have it on my system, just pulled it down. And I want you to notice that's generally speaking, when you see something that looks like this.
The little warning symbol is...
that's sort of universal.
it means something's not right.
Exactly. And so you'll notice that when I go to launch this, I get an error message. And the error message that you're going to get is going to vary a little bit depending on what's going on. In my case, it happens to be system cannot find the path specified. Mm-hmm. So again, what I need to do is I need to, and there we go, recreate my environment. So I'm just going to right-click on this, and I'm going to say remove, and we'll go ahead and remove that from the project.
Which is a little counterintuitive. You don't think to yourself, delete the thing with the error. But the thing is, you're going to recreate it correctly.
Exactly. By just going back in, right-click, add virtual environment. And then back over here, it will automatically read from that requirements text file for us. So really all that we have to do is just click create. And then if we just sort of give that a couple of moments here, and I'm going to zoom back out. And again, sip of coffee. I'm almost out of coffee.
But yeah, now it's actually going to recreate the environment correctly with all the packages that are needed for Flask.
Yeah, you can actually see all that in the output window behind the scenes, that it's going out and it's pulling everything down. I know it's giving me a lot of warnings, but that's okay. Warning.
You can also now see in the Solution Explorer, all those nice packages, and we can see the little warning symbol went away.
Yep. And we can also see, little Control F5, hit yes.
No module. Oh, hang on. You must have downloaded. That's a finished version.
Yeah, you're right.
He just tried to run the code. It's going to work after we're done Module 5, and we're on Module 2.
Yeah, give me 2 seconds here. Let me just go grab that. That's funny. Here, look, it works. Oh, wait a minute. No, it didn't.
Yeah. You can't jump ahead 3 chapters without doing the code in between. So absolutely. But the key thing is, you can see the little warning symbol's gone away, as said, and the code will actually run, except we're missing the packages, which we'll be adding this afternoon.
There we go. There we go. Okay, and so now it works.
Okay.
See, it does in fact work. There was just one little thing I needed to add in. And in fact, I'm curious if if that was an error message that somebody was getting. So you know what I'm going to do real quick here is I'm just going to check this in.
You're going to update the code on the server. So if anybody else was getting that error about the Redis, if you just download the zip file again, we're just going to update the copy that's in GitHub so that you have the corrected version and we don't accidentally give you the code for the later stuff.
Exactly. Cool. All right. Now then.
Nothing like being live.
Exactly. Really cooking on this show.
All right.
Now, I also need to open up the correct project. There we go. And I need to open up my slide deck.
And now there was another question that came up in the Q&A as well, asking about that app.route/ thing.
Yeah, we should probably talk about that, shouldn't we?
I think so. That might be a nice reminder. We said we would talk about that, so I think it's time.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's roll into Module 2 then.
Okay.
Creating web pages. Now that we know what a web application is,
how
do we actually send information from the user to the server, and from the server to the user.
Because that is huge. I mean, that's what allows us to really make a web application. It's one, well, we already actually have the ability to just display stuff on a web page to the user.
Exactly.
But obviously, when I order books online and so on, I ask the server, what books do you have on Python? And it gives me a list, and I say, well, I want to order this one. So there must be a way to have two-way communication.
Exactly. So here's what we need to get into, is we need to start talking about how this communication is going to take place. We need to talk about that writing concept. That's going to go back to that question that you were talking about. And then we need to kind of enable a little bit of additional functionality. But let's start by, talking about how to talk to servers. Now, caution.
Next one. Yep. So it is a warning, but the cool thing about this is you'll be able to speak geek so well after this that you are going to be able to, impress your friends with geek speak once you've mastered this topic.
So here's the thing: is stick with me.
Yes.
I promise you, I'm going to get you there. It's just going to take a little bit, and there's going to be a lot of explaining that I'm going to have to do to get us there. Because there's going to be a couple of very big terms that we need to understand, and we need to really understand the why. So this is sort of my spiel. Let me go. I promise you, you got to trust me on this. I'm going to get you to the other side. So let's start by defining two big terms here, and then digging into them.
Okay.
And the two main terms here are request and response.
Okay.
Now, request is coming from the user. So the user has made a request to the server. Response is what the server is going to send back. So again, kind of going back to that restaurant analogy, getting hungry.
Okay.
Going back to that restaurant analogy, I ask my server, hey, I would like a steak rare. My server is going to go off, get that, and bring that back to me. So I made my request, steak rare. My server is now going to respond by bringing me said steak. So request, this is what I want. And then response is that server sending that information back. Now, let's take a look at sort of a real-world application example of this. And let's talk about creating a website.
Sure.
And in fact, we should probably back this all the way up and ask a question. Why are you creating a website in the first place? Well, the reason that you're creating a website in the first place is because you have information that you want to share, and because, quite likely, in some way, shape, or form, you want to make money.
That is true. I mean, if you think about the websites you visit, they're either trying to show you advertisements so they make money, or they're trying to sell us something, a service, or a product.
Okay, so let's break that down. So let's start with number one, is advertising. How do we make money with advertising? More visitors. So we want to make it as easy as possible for people to come to our site, keep seeing the same pages, and we want to make it very easy for other people to share those pages. So that way when they go to Facebook, they go to Twitter, and they say, hey, look, I saw this is really cool, that they have the very easy ability out. So if
when I want somebody...
Advertising.
Sure.
Okay. So advertising. Let's go with number two, services. So I'm trying to sell a service. I'm a law firm. I'm a
plumber.
Plumber. I'm a spackling company. Spackling company?
We'll stick with plumber.
Okay. So anyway, what I'd be looking for if I'm a service like that is I want more visitors. Because after all, the more people that come to my site, that's going to increase the chances that they're going to pick up the phone or fire up an email and hire me for my services. So once again, I want to make it very easy to allow people to share my site and keep requesting those same pages over and over again. And if we bring this into the last example of, hey, look, we're selling products, which is sort of the one that everybody thinks of, the more traditional, once again, it's still the same concept. I want to make sure that people have very easy ability to see the page that describes the super widget that I want to sell them. So basically, regardless of the type of web application that you're going to be creating, the end goal is we want eyeballs, we want visitors. Why? Because chances are we want money. That's why we're creating these web pages. So let's take a look then at our little example here, and let's say that we're setting up a little photo sharing app. So we've got a little guy here. There's our little photographer enthusiast. See, you'll notice he's got a camera. He says, I'd like to download a picture of a koala. So he goes to adventureworks.com/ and then in this case, sleeping koala. And that's going to send off the little picture of the koala. I did, in fact, take that picture. By the way, getting a picture of a sleeping koala is the easiest thing to do.
I think they sleep 23 to 23 and a half hours a day, yeah.
Yeah, basically that's their state most of the day. That's a lifestyle that I envy.
Yeah.
In any event, so they go in and they say, all right, well, this is what I want to see. And the server's going to go, okay, sure. There's the picture, and send that on down. And I want you to notice something about this URL is that it's nice, it's clean, it's simple, it's replayable. That every single time that somebody types in that URL, they send that request over the server, you know what they're going to get? They're going to get that cute little koala picture right there.
Just like every time I say my favorite restaurant / menu, it brings me up the menu for my favorite restaurant.
That's exactly it.
Yeah, really, I know exactly what I'm getting back when I type in that URL.
And there's the next big point. You know exactly what you're going to get back. So you know you're going to get a menu. I know I'm going to get a sleeping koala. Because that's exactly what it says. Again, I suppose it's possible we might get rickrolled in the middle of this, but that's a different conversation. So you'll notice that's exactly what we're going to get. So having that nice, clean URL and having this URL be replayable becomes very important. And as it turns out, when you make a request up to a server, there's two different places that information that you want to send up could be sent.
Okay.
So it could be sent in the URL.
Right.
So that's going to be either inside the query string, like it is here, or it could just be part of the URL itself. So I can actually pass information right there as part of the URL, and that's going to be replayable. So anybody with that URL could access that page. So anybody that sees that URL could access that page. And let's kind of spin this back to my analogy that I've been using, is if I'm sitting in a restaurant, and I say to my server, maybe some special code. Maybe there's a little discount code. And so whatever it happens to be, so let's just say the discount is Web Wednesday. So I say to my server, Web Wednesday, and that's going to get me 10% off. Well, if somebody else overhears me say Web Wednesday, you know what's going to happen? They're going to be able to say Web Wednesday as well and get the exact same discount. And in a lot of cases, that's exactly what I want. That I want that information to be shared. I want that information to be public, because if you're going to offer a discount like that, typically you're doing that to attract more customers, to get more people in, and we want that to be replayable. Bringing that back over into our environment here, again, we want this to be replayable. So every single time that somebody comes in and they say, sleeping koala, we want to make sure that they can get back that picture. So it's important to be able to send information inside of a URL.
Yeah, and earlier you had that query string as well, and you do see that a lot, I find, on pages where are online stores.
Yes.
My husband and I were shopping for lighting fixtures, and it was like, hey, I like this lighting fixture. And he'd send me a link, and it would be a URL just like that, / hall lights, query, and it would have that little question mark, and then it would have like the catalog number of that particular light.
Exactly.
And when he sent me that link inside an email, I click on that link and I saw the exact same lighting fixture my husband was talking about, and then we're like, oh yeah, I like that too, and then we can go buy it.
Exactly. We want that to be replayable. We want that to be shareable. That we want more people to come in and look at that.
Yeah.
Cool. But sometimes there's information that we wouldn't want replayable. So let's kind of go back to my restaurant analogy here, and let's say that I start speaking my credit card number out loud to the server.
No, I don't really want the person next to me knowing my credit card number.
Well, because again, at that point it would become replayable. Because if that's the way that we're going to exchange credit card numbers, the person next to me hears my credit card number, they start speaking that, and again, that's
and now you're paying for their dinner. Yeah,
exactly.
And we do use credit card numbers on the web, so it's a very relevant analogy.
Exactly. So this is going to work. So we need some way that we can tuck that information away. Make sure that that's not going to be visible. Now, I'm going to tangent here for 30 seconds. See, you'll notice I slid to the side.
That's your tangent? This is your aside.
I'm going to talk over here. One big thing that we're not going to get into today is a thing called SSL, Secure Sockets Layer, which would do encryption. And one big thing that I want to highlight about this header information is that it's not going to be replayable, it's not going to be in the URL, but it's not by default going to be encrypted.
Which means if you've got someone who knows how to sneak around and sniff
you need
things.
to move to the side because we're on the tangent mode.
Okay, so is it right? Okay,
yeah,
so
to your right. To your
All right,
right.
so
we're in
that
tangent
means these people who know how to go hack things and dig around and stuff, they can see the stuff in the header if they know what they're doing.
Exactly, yeah. So we would need to use SSL. So this is not going to encrypt it, and so it's just going to tuck it behind the scenes. We still need to encrypt it, but we also still want it out of that URL because we don't want anybody to be able to see that. Okay. Back to here.
Back to our main program.
Yes. We return back to our regular programming. So back over here on that header info, that's again going to be sent behind the scenes, but it's also going to give us one other big advantage here, is that there's no size or type restriction. So again, let's say that I happen to be very specific about the order that I want to make. So I'm going to, let's say, order ribeye, and I want that to be rare, but I want that to be
with
only,
mushrooms and the teriyaki sauce.
Exactly.
And sliced vertically,
Exactly. So I want all of those different things. Well, if I just keep saying this to my server, chances are my server is going to forget this. There's only so much information that you could communicate that way. Sort of the same thing with a URL. Depending on the browser and a couple of other things, your URL is going to be restricted on the number of characters. Header information, however, not restricted whatsoever. So we can send a lot more information, and it's also going to be tucked away. So let's, I'm actually going to go slightly over on my slides here. Let's actually see this in action and ignore the fact that it says post. I'll come back.
Okay.
So, here we go with somebody maybe wanting to make a comment here. So let's say they really like that picture. So they'd like to put in a comment. This is not something that I want replayable, that I want to make sure that every time somebody wants to make a comment, they have to go in, fill out the form, that they can't just simply grab the URL. So this is where sending it up inside the header information comes into play. So we give them the form. They type in their little thing called cute picture. I really should have stopped that animation over there, but you'll notice they typed in cute picture.
Yep.
And so now that information is going to be sent up here, and I want to highlight the URL. And you'll notice that it's still www.adventureworks.com whack comment.
Yeah, it's true. I'm using the exact same URL, but two different things are happening. The first time I specify the URL, it's just giving me back a blank form.
Correct.
The second time, I'm sending it my filled out form.
Exactly. Yeah. So we're going to get to that first part here in a second. It's that second part that right now is very important, because you're going to notice cute picture is not in that URL.
So it must be in that header information.
There you go. And that is exactly our header information in action there, that it's going to be sent behind the scenes. Now, let's come back to that first part that Susan just mentioned there. And you'll notice sort of that two-step process here of, hey, look, I'd like to comment. Well, in order for me to comment, what do I need? I need
the form to fill out.
Exactly. So I punch in whack comment, and it gives me that form back.
Right.
Okay. And then I go in, I fill out my little cute picture, and then we send that back up.
So how does it know when to just give me the blank form, and when am I sending in a filled out form?
Fantastic question. And that's going to be based on two what are known as verbs, which are get and post. Now, a lot of times when people hear get and post, they automatically assume, and this is fair, and I got to be honest, I did this as well. Because it sort of makes sense that when you hear get, what you're thinking is, I'm getting information. When you hear post, you're sending information. And it's not entirely true, because I can still send information when I do get, because after all, kind of winding all of this back to my little cute koala picture here, you're going to notice we sent information. We said we wanted a sleeping koala.
And that was a get.
Exactly, that was a get. So we can still send information. But the main difference is that we only have the ability to send data inside the URL.
Okay.
With post, we can do it in the URL as well as in the header. And so remember, could be URL as well as header. So, could be both. Now the question becomes, well, how does the server know? When the browser makes the request, it will actually say, hey, I'm making a GET request. Or it will say, hey, I'm making a post request. And we're going to see in the next module how we can actually control that, how we can actually do either a GET or a post. The main thing that I want to mention here is that the default is GET. So it's only going to be post if you explicitly do something to send up a post request, which is typically going to be done with a form. And again, come back to me in the next module, and I'll show you how that's going to be done.
So as a coder, when I'm writing my Python code, does that mean I'm going to need to be able to say, well, hang on, if this was a GET, I just want to send in a blank form, and if this was a post, then I know I'm getting my information back?
100% correct. That's exactly it. That inside your code, you're going to need to be able to detect, and that is going to be sort of the typical pattern. Typical pattern here is you're going to first detect the fact that they did a GET, and then what's going to happen is you'll send down the form.
Yep.
And then you're going to detect the fact that, hey, look, they set a post, and then you're going to read that data. So that's going to be the typical pattern. And so when we go in and we create, for example, a create question, that's exactly what we're going to have. That we're going to have one little block that's just going to send the form down. There we go. And we're going to create another block that's going to accept that brand new question, save that back into our data store, and then send back to the user, hey, look, that was successful. So you're going to notice that that's going to be very common programming inside of Flask and inside of your little application.
Cool.
Yeah. All right. Now, like I said, bit of terminology. But hopefully what we did there is kind of brought all that together and saw all that. And I know that chances are, after kind of going through all of that, we need to see it in action, and we will, I promise you. But this is one of those things where we need to define this right up front, because when we start getting into things like routing, we need to kind of understand that little GET post and all of that good stuff. So that's always why I like to cover that. And just to close it all off, the response information, there's an awful lot that could be sent back down with response. Could be things like status codes, the type of file that we're going to send. That, one of the things that we've been highlighting is things like HTML, CSS, JavaScript. But, we could send down images, we could send down videos. So there's a lot that we could actually send down. And so if you are going to send down an image, you need to tell the browser, hey, we're about to send down an image. Otherwise, it's not going to be expecting that. And you do that inside the header information. But typically, the content that you're going to be sending down, HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Cool. Now, you asked me a question many minutes ago now.
Yep.
And that question was, we had a question in the Q&A window that asked a little more, was trying to remember what that app.route/ was doing inside the code. That's a great question. And that is a route. So let's get in and start digging into what routing is all about. Now, what I always like to say when it comes to Flask is that at the end of the day, what a user is doing is they're calling a function. That here, let me back out of my slides real quick here. I'm just going to add in an ad hoc demo. There we go. There's my little music for an ad hoc demo. Okay, so you remember this from before. So let's again ignore this right here. What's this again, Susan?
That is a purely Python function.
That's it. That's all that is. So what's going to happen here is this function is going to be called, and in fact here, we can see it. I'm going to put a breakpoint right there. I'm going to hit F5 to go into my debugger. Whoops. And apparently I'm going to hit the number 5 as well.
I'm not sure Python knows what to do with that, so all right.
That's okay, neither do I. There we go. Take 2 here. Chugga. And you'll notice it decided not to break for me. That was awful nice of you.
Did you delete the breakpoint by any chance? Oh,
no.
We'll try again.
Yeah, take 2.
Your code's still running?
Yeah.
The number of times we all do that when we're doing demonstrations. It's like, wait, my project is still running. Not enough code inside your function, my friend, to get breakpoints. There's rules about breakpoints, about what types of lines of code they're allowed to be on. So if you declare a variable or something, yes, that'll force it to stop long enough for us to show you that it's running. So this is something, it's just there's only certain lines of code it'll break on. And now they're going to think you really do have some magic code up your sleeve.
Stop.
There we go.
Hooray! All right.
Congratulations.
Now we can actually get it to break. And you know what's sad is that we spent all of that time for what's going to be a very simplistic demo.
I know.
But here's the point that I want to make is that we typed in this little / and if I go back to my browser here and let's just kind of zoom on in here, you'll notice right there at the very end that there's a /. So that is actually what's being sent into Flask, what's being sent into the server, and then behind the scenes, it's now going to run that function. So at the end of the day, all that we're doing here is we're just running Python functions. So what we need is a way for our users to communicate to us which function it is that they want to call. Now, of course, they're not going to know that they're calling a function.
No, they're just typing in some sort of URL.
But at the end of the day, they're making a request. They're looking for some behavior.
Yeah.
So that when you go to restaurant.com or, whatever.
When I go to my favorite restaurant /menu, I'm asking for the menu.
Exactly.
When I say go to restaurant /directions, I want to see the directions.
And when you go, sleeping koala, you're looking for the sleeping koala. So again, in two-part harmony, what you're going to notice is that at the end of the day, we're just making those method calls. That's really and our users are requesting functionality. And that is what routing is all about. That routing is all about taking the URL that a user punches in and doing something with it. Now, traditionally, in a lot of other technologies, the user, again, not necessarily knowing it, is making a request of a specific page. So they're specifically looking for aboutus.html. They're specifically looking for register.aspx. But the problem with that is, what happens if later on we decide that we want to change? That maybe we don't want to use HTML anymore, that maybe we want to use PHP or we want to use MVC. Now that starts to become a real problem. So we want something that's going to get away from calling specific pages and instead request that functionality. And so you'll notice that we've got register and you'll notice that we've got about. Because if I back up here, what you're going to notice is that we've got this little extension here of that .html and that .aspx. I have no idea what that is.
Yeah, for the user, that's very confusing.
Exactly.
And I remember that in the old days it was .htm, and some were .html, and some were .htm, and then it was .asp, and then it was .aspx. It got really confusing for the poor users.
Yeah, exactly. But, if I say whack about or register, I know exactly what's about to happen on the other side.
I'm going to bring up the About page.
And do I care what's happening behind the scenes on the server?
I certainly don't care if you did it in ASP versus ASP.NET versus HTML. I just want to get to my web page.
I just want that functionality. That's exactly it. So it's going to create more readable URLs. Mm-hmm. It's going to give us increased functionality or flexibility. And then, most importantly, it's going to give us search engine optimization. And, we could spend the entire day talking about SEO or search engine optimization and probably barely scratch the surface.
Which is all about trying to show up on the first page when they do a search.
Exactly. And, here's the thing, is if you just follow a couple of very simple little steps, you're going to be just fine. That you're going to be able to show the search engine what your site is all about. And one of the simplest to highlight is the fact that your URLs are very simplistic. That when I go to whack register, I know what's going to happen. When I go to whack about, I know what's going to happen. And not only do I know,
The search engine knows.
And the search engine knows.
And that means more people find you. That means more people visiting your site, which means
Yep.
you make more money with your advertising, your restaurant, or whatever you're doing.
Show me the money.
Yes.
By the way, last little thing to mention here is that there is an MVA on search engine optimization.
Why am I not surprised? I got to say, the coverage at this point on MVA is pretty amazing.
Hey, you know? Yeah.
All right. But back to our routing.
Back to our routing. So what I want you to notice is routing is taking that URL and translating it into something. So the server needs to understand what in the world the user is requesting. So the server doesn't know what rack register is. You're going to tell it what it is by adding in those routes, and that's going to be where you specify the URL for that particular desired item or function. So let's go in and take a look at kind of routing 101 here, that if I go into Visual Studio, and let's just come down over to here, is I'm going to say app route.
Okay, so you're adding another route now. So right now we had the slash did our hello world, so you're now adding a new route.
That's exactly what I'm doing.
Okay.
So I'm going to start with a forward slash.
Okay.
Start from the root of our server, and then I could type in really whatever word it is that I want here. So could I use Wibble?
Yeah, though a user wouldn't really know what the heck Wibble's doing, but okay.
Shove 2 pencils up your nose, put your underwear on your head, keep saying Wibble over and over and over again, and it helps you get out of the army.
If you say so.
True story. So in any event, could I say Wibble? Absolutely. Wibble, wibble, wibble. But it doesn't actually mean anything to the outside world. So I want this to be nice, clear, and clean. So instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to say create. Because what this is going to do is this is now going to create a question.
Right, because this is the first step towards a trivia app that you and I were planning to build.
It is, yeah. I'm going to build a little bit of it now just so that way we can keep using these demos later. Don't worry, we are going to get into the specifics of it. But for right now, create. Yeah, this is going to be the starting point. Now, so we just added that in. So what we've now said is, hey, server, if you see somebody type in create, what I want you to do is I want you to call the method that's going to be right under it. That's all that happened right here. If you'll notice that was the method that was called. Why? Position. Location, location, location. It was right under that app route.
Okay.
So I now come back over here and I'm just going to define
a new Python function.
A new Python. And I'm going to call it create.
And that is really a good practice. Just call it the same thing as the route, and that way it'll be easier for you to remember. It doesn't matter. You could have called it Wibble, but it's just easier for you to follow your own code if you use the same names for your functions as you do for your routes.
Exactly. Now, I am going to cheat a little bit here in that I'm just going to send down an H2 tag. I'm not going to build out the full text that we saw up above. Mm-hmm. And the reason that I'm not going to do that is just because we're going to go back and throw that out.
We just want to show that this route calls this function, right?
Exactly. That's it. That's all that we want to do. And so sure enough, you're going to notice, chugga, that if I go in and I now say create, there is our create page. So you'll notice right up at the very top, I said create, and it's now on the create page.
Perfect. So a different route, different functions called, different output displayed to the user.
That's exactly it. Now, let's let me close that out, and I'm just going to close all of that out. There we go. Now, one of the things that can happen here is that your application can get very big.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's very possible that you're going to have dozens, maybe even hundreds of different routes out there. And so, it's going to get a little bit tedious to try and keep everything inside of one file.
It could get very cluttered.
Yeah. So fortunately, we can create additional files. So let's actually just add new item, empty Python file, and I'm going to call this routes, which is where our routes
will be stored. I like that.
Go. Nice and easy. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut my code here.
So you're taking the code out of the app.py file for routing code and moving it to the routes.py file.
Exactly. So I just simply move that into my routes, and I'm also going to server whack create. Let's
add some comments. Good idea.
And so this demo is not going to work. You're going to notice that I moved that code over, so it's the same code that we saw before, and I run my app. And you're going to notice I'm going to get a 404. File not found. And you're probably wondering, well, wait a minute, why was that not found? It's a good question. The reason that it wasn't found is because my application doesn't know to actually go call that routes file. So what I need to do is I need to go import.
Well, that kind of makes sense. It's not just going to magically just go searching for, are there any files out there somewhere that have the routes defined? You have to tell it.
It'd be nice if it was magic. There is no magic in Python. So what I need to do is import that. So I'm just simply going to say from routes, import, and then asterisk, which means import everything. Now, by the way, there is no magic to the name routes.
Okay.
That it's just simply
a convention?
Routes. Yeah. Well, it is convention. Again, could I have called it Wibble? Sure, but nobody's going to know what that means.
I mean, if I opened up somebody's project and I saw a file called routes, I might guess that that's where they're doing the routing. Exactly. And that's why you're doing it.
Yeah. And you might also decide, as your project gets bigger, that you're going to create additional routes files as well. So you would just simply import all of your additional ones. So, maybe for our cart, we would say import asterisk. And maybe from our products, we would say import asterisk if we were creating an e-commerce site. So we've got all those different files. So we just simply import all of them in, and away we go. So now, let's go ahead and launch this again. It's going to fail again.
Yep.
And now you're going to notice I'm getting a slightly different error message here.
Yeah, it's actually coming back saying app is not defined. That's true, and you did have code in there that says app.route, so it looks like it can't figure out what app is.
You're absolutely right. It can't figure out what app is. So what I need to do is inside my routes py, I need to pull in two things. First of all, we're going to be doing Flask in here, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We're doing Flask.
Guess what we need?
Maybe need to import Flask?
Hey. So we need that. And then we also need app. So I'm going to say from app, import app, which I know is sort of a little bit of a funny line. From app, import app. Here's what's happening is, let me do this way. App here, this is the file. So that's pointing to our app.py file over there.
Okay.
App is the name of the variable that we declared. So if I come back over here, there is the variable that I had declared.
Right. So that's the app variable it was saying it couldn't find.
Exactly. So now we've got Flask, now we've got app, and now we run this one last time, chugga, 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 and there is our Hello World Susan. Let's go in and say create. And
awesome.
There's our create page.
So nice. So now we have a nice tidy way of sort of, not cluttering up one file with everything, because that can get unmanageable very fast when you start building bigger sites.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, absolutely. So just cut and paste for routing information into a routes.py file. You can call it something else if you want, but routes is a nice, easy to guess name, intuitive name, but you do have to add a couple of import statements to the top of the file.
There you go.
All right.
Cool. Now, let's keep on keeping on, shall we?
Yeah.
Because up until now, all that we've done is just shown off the ability to do this part of the URL.
Right.
Now, it'd be nice to be able to take a variable right over there instead of that question mark ID equals blah, blah, blah.
No, those query strings, they call the query strings, yeah.
Exactly. And we want to make sure that this is going to be nice and clean and easy. So that if I go to www.example.com, whack speakers, whack Susan I back, guess what I'm going to see there?
Christopher Harrison.
Close.
I figured you'd hacked my website, gone in there.
Not quite.
Okay.
No, what I'm going to see there is I'm going to see information about a speaker named Susan Ibach. And it's all right there in the URL. And sometimes this is what's known as a vanity URL because the name of whatever it is we're going to see on the other side is inside of that URL. And why is this important? Well, once again, it's important for search engine optimization, for SEO, because that's Susan Ibach. So the search engine's going to know that that's Susan Ibach. On top of that, it's once again going to give us predictable URLs. So if somebody hands me that, www.example.com, whack speakers, whack Susan Ibach, and I know that, for example, maybe Christopher did speak there, that I could go in and I could say,
whack Christopher Harrison, and hopefully it just, I've guessed.
Exactly.
And I bring up a speaker information on Christopher.
That's it. And so now what we need to do is talk about how we're going to add in those vanity URLs.
Right.
So once again, let's come back over here and let's just go in and say server, whack question.
Okay.
More on that later. And then I'm going to use an angle bracket, title, angle bracket.
Okay.
Now, angle bracket, angle bracket is traditionally used to be a placeholder, right?
Yep.
Okay. How about app, route, question, title?
Okay.
It's traditionally used as a placeholder.
Okay.
Guess what? It's a placeholder. So here's what's cool is that it's automatically going to be looking for some bit of string afterwards that's going to be title. And I would also mention real quickly here that if you wanted to constrain that maybe you just wanted that to be an integer or you wanted to force that to be a string or something like that,
that's cool.
That you could go in and do that.
So yeah, if you're expecting an ID number, an account number, you could specify.
You could say int colon. Yeah.
Sure.
So in my case, I'm just going to say title, and then I'm going to say def question, and I'm going to say title.
Oh, so you're just accepting as a parameter to function, just like we would with any Python function. We want to accept parameters.
That's it. And I'm going to say return. And let's go in and say h2, and I'm going to say plus, and I'm going to say title, and I'm going to close out my h2 there. By the way, something I just picked up on here, and this is, it's one of those things. Sometimes Python is a little bit too flexible, and so you wind up easing into bad habits, and I've sort of eased into that you might notice here, and I apologize if I've confused anybody, you might notice that I've been using single quotes on the route, and I've been using double quotes here, and that unfortunately has just been sort of the way it's been flowing off my fingers. I could absolutely use single quotes across the board, and I could absolutely use double quotes across the board. So just sort of a bad flow I got myself into. Now, in any event, let's go in and highlight something here. You are going to notice that once again, Susan, I'm going to put you on the spot.
Okay.
The spot highlighted in blue, that's a.
That is just a Python function, but the difference between this one and the others is this one's accepting a parameter title, which means the function's expecting me to pass in a title when I call it.
Cool. So it's expecting title. So it's expecting a parameter, still just a normal Python function, but expecting a parameter. Guess where it's going to get it from?
I'm hoping it's going to get it from that URL. Do I have to do anything to magically connect that, say that title placeholder, I want to put it into that title parameter?
Just make sure that the names are the same. That's all that you have to do. So if you say title, say title. If you say Wibble, say Wibble. So you just have to make sure that those two are the same. That's it. Cool. And so now, if I, once again, launch my little page here, and I go question Wibble, it's going to print out Wibble. And if I say question Christopher, it's going to print out Christopher. So it's just taking that title, passing that in, and then giving me access to that. That's pretty cool, right?
Yeah. That is neat. And so I actually, can actually read a string or something that they typed into the URL, and then in my code I can use that string. That's going to be pretty powerful.
That's exactly it. Yeah, it's very powerful. We'll actually see later on how we're going to be able to use this to go load our questions for our little trivia app. Okay, now, back to our slides here, because we've got, go away.
Too many things open at the same time.
There we go. My taskbar just didn't want to behave. One of the little problems that we can run into here is that we need to be able to create links. And so in order to create a link, we need to have the URL. And unfortunately, the URL might change.
That's true.
And it might change for restructuring purposes or otherwise. So if it changes, and I've hard-coded that URL in 12 different places, I now have to run around to all of those 12 places and change that.
Yeah, and that is true of coding a lot of times. What drives you nuts is, it's that old rule of as soon as you find yourself copying and pasting the same line of code to 10 places, you're thinking, oh, it's easy, just cut and paste. Yeah, it's easy until one day that thing you cut and pasted changes, and now you have to remember to change it in 12 places.
Exactly. So, there's an old phrase that's sort of streamlined as Einstein once said, don't memorize anything you can look up. And the full story behind that is he was doing an interview and some constant had come up and Einstein didn't know what it was. And the reporter was, flabbergasted at this. How could you not know what this is? And Einstein said, why would I memorize something that I could look up in a book in under 2 minutes? My corollary to that in programming is don't hard code anything that you can look up. So if I can ask for that value, I'm going to ask for that value rather than hard coding that in, because once again, that could change. So let's take this and take a look at how we could add in a link here. So once again, back over here to our little page, and on the home, instead of saying hello Susan, sorry Susan, I want to now create a link into the create page.
Oh, awesome! Because
Okay.
we see web pages doing that all the time. You
Absolutely.
forever, you land on the page and it said, I'm going to go back to my restaurant, and on the main homepage, if you don't know, you can type restaurant/menu to get to the menu. Then usually visit a little link on the page where you can click and say, take me to the menu, take me to directions, let me make reservations.
Exactly. Okay. So that was like a perfect level of distraction here.
I try.
And whoops, I need
As we add the code here.
my quotes.
But yeah.
There we go. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to set up my little create link, and I'm just going to add
That's
that
just
in,
so create link's just a variable that contains a string,
That's
and that
it.
and that href, that's the syntax of HTML for providing a link to another page.
Exactly. But what I need inside of there is said link.
Which would be some sort of URL, www.something or HTTP
Exactly.
something.
Yep. And so I want to point that at create.
Okay.
So as long as the function name doesn't change.
Okay.
So you got to keep that, because something's got to be consistent here.
Uh-huh.
So as long as the function name doesn't change, you can go ahead and keep doing it. And so all that you need is this little thing called URL for, and then in my case, it's going to be create, right?
Yep.
Well, you're going to notice that if I fired this up, it would not work. The reason is that it's not going to know what URL for is, well, for. It doesn't know what URL for is.
Okay.
So I need to go import that in, and you're going to notice that that's inside of Flask. So I go in and I say, aha, URL for, let's bring that in, and that's now going to bring that to life. And so now you'll actually notice that if I go in and I say URL for, open paren, now it's actually giving me the IntelliSense. So now I could go in and say create, just like that. Wait for
Okay.
it. There we go. And now let's go back in. Let's say yes. Let's chugga. And now you're going to notice it says create a question. And I
Okay.
put my mouse over this. And down at the very bottom, you're going to notice that it now says create. And just to sort of prove a point here, there we go. If I updated that route to say Wibble, Wibble's always just my throwaway word, and it's also a reference to a BBC show that nobody knows. What I want you to notice is this, is the function that I had created. I don't know why my typing keeps disappearing. The function that I had created, I had said define create.
So you just renamed the route. You didn't change the function name.
Exactly. Just created the route, renamed the route, didn't change the function name. So as long as that stays the same, that's just going to make a mess of things. It's still going to make a mess of things. There we go. As long as that stays the same, it will always pick up what the route is. So you'll notice that it automatically updated itself to now be Wibble.
Awesome. So that means I can change the URL that a user wants. If I want to rename, or I'm making a French version of the website or something, so I want to change it to, well, I guess menu, still menu in French, but créer instead of create.
Yes.
Then I have that ability, and now that route points to that function, and I don't have to change my code just because I change the URL people type in to get there.
And that's exactly it. That's exactly it. And by the way, Barry, our camera guy in the back, asked a question, is Wibble from Blackadder? And the answer to that question is yes, it is. Woo-hoo! Thank you for getting my reference. Cool. All right.
You're not alone.
Fantastic show, by the way. In any event, let's close all this off. Because we covered a fair amount of ground there. And so the question then becomes, well, what did we learn? Well, we learned about get and post. We learned how to create custom URLs. We learned how to send information to the user. We are going to see in the next module how we can pull that information in. Well, what can we do with all of this? Because that seemed, sort of esoteric. That seemed kind of academic. Well, the biggest thing is we now learn how to best share information with the world. That you want to keep your URLs predictable, nice, clean, make sure that the user understands exactly what they're going to get when they click on your link, and in turn, the search engine is going to get. We also saw how to create our custom URLs, and we also saw how to go in and begin building our own web applications. But of course, we need to keep going.
Absolutely.
There's more to do here, but I need a break.
I bet you're not the only one. So
let's go ahead, take 10 minutes, and we'll come on back. We'll see you in 10.